Biden tells a budget whopper. He claims he's the biggest deficit cutter in history. So we bring in the reserves. Joining us is Russ Vought, former OMB Director, President of the Center for Renewing America. We're bringing in the heavy lumber. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office, Russ Vought. I'm the only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Really? You buying that?
I'm not. It's a ludicrous statement. It's one of those laugh out loud moments in an otherwise lackluster speech. You know, the reality is that this administration had the types of COVID spending that allows them to come down, hopefully, off of those high levels. And then they have $1 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see. And it's something that they wanted to exacerbate with their Build Back Better. And now they're moving in a time of high inflation, and that's only going to have increasing levels of spending as a lot of these programs are on autopilot going up with inflation. So it's not a serious statement. It's not something that Congress is going to listen to, thankfully. And of course, the American people are going to know and believe otherwise.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the deficit comes down because some emergency spending runs off, I say if, it's through no fault of Biden's, because he wanted a $5 trillion plan. And that, so I don't know what he's talking. I mean, what's so great about that speech, Russ? He didn't use the phrase "Build Back Better," but all of the social spending was in there, and it's been priced out by the CBO, as you know better than I, as $5 trillion with a $3 trillion increase in federal debt, if any of it went through. So it's no fault of his own if the deficit comes down. And yeah, by the way, you make a good point. So the inflation rate is running upwards of 7-8% and rising. We're going to get new numbers soon. That's going to increase budget spending. But don't they have an omnibus appropriations bill coming up, which would raise, spending in the next year or two by close to 20%?
Yeah, Larry, they're going to pass next week or the week after another $1.5 trillion omnibus bill, which is the annual spending. That's about a $300 billion increase from the year before, 16%, 20%. It's about a $2.5 trillion bill over 10 years. And so to do that in a time of 7% inflation is insane. They're trying to add another $30 billion, $22 billion of emergency spending for COVID. They have about $100 billion at the very least, probably much more, that hasn't been unspent that they want to add on top of that. So it doesn't ever stop. And remember, $2 of the $1 trillion from the COVID was stuff that we didn't need that happened last year. And so he's taking credit for even coming down off of the emergency high that he was responsible when on a bipartisan basis. And so, you know, he's responsible in the past, present, and future for what we're seeing fiscally in this country.
Russ, do you think anybody on his staff has ever said to him that deficit spending causes higher inflation? Just saying.
No, I don't think they have an economic team that deals with economic reality. I think they have a bunch of ideologues, and so they all come in and make their justifications based on those types of policy arguments. And as a result, I don't think they have adults in the room, even on their side, folks like Larry Summers and folks like that who warned about inflation early last year, along with many of us. I don't think they have anyone like that in the room.
And Russ, I thought you knew that the Trump tax cuts of 2017 only went to rich people. President Biden said that also. They only went to rich people. Did you know that, Russ Vought?
So I've heard, but unfortunately, that is not reflective of the fact that it was raising the boats at the lowest economic portion of our country. And so, you know, I wish that had been articulated clearly and accurately to the American people, but I think they know it from the comparison to this administration to our administration.
Do facts matter? Do factoids matter to this administration? I mean, really, I say this, I'm being a little bit snarky, but President Biden always repeats this stuff. And let's take the tax cuts, only the top 1% richest people. And yet, Russ, you can go to Brookings, you can go to the Tax Foundation, you can go to the Washington Post. you know, their fact checker, who's a big liberal anyway, even they give him 4 and 5 Pinocchios or whatever that goofy thing is. It's like everybody then shows the next day after Biden says this stuff that he's wrong. And eventually it shows up in the polls where people no longer believe he's honest. I mean, that's what I mean. Do facts matter at all to the Biden crowd?
I don't, and I don't mean to be provocative when I say that this administration continues to gaslight the American people. I mean, just give you another example. They said that the border was secure. I was at the border last week. The border is not secure. That's just a flat-out lie. I don't know how you think of it any other way than to think of it as they are lying to the American people on economic news, on security news, and the American people know it. We've got to continue to just call them out on it.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it started out as cognitive dissonance. Then I called it falsehoods. It's just now lies. It's just a bunch of lies. And you're right. American people are calling them out on it. Anyway, Russ Vought, thank you, my friend. More to be revealed. He's the greatest deficit cutter in American history. I just love that. Coming up on Kudlow.